Today I want to discuss Glamrock Freddy and Prototype Freddy, and then just whether or not Prototype Freddy is the same Glamrock Freddy that we're running around with in Security Breach. And I would like to argue that Freddy is the same as the prototype that we see in Ruin, but let's quickly look over some of the counters that people have made. One of them is that he has a gift in his chest. He somehow has this chomping chest feature now. There's some slight visual changes, and the most important change is that he has the prototype word on his foot that he does not have in Security Breach. I want to discuss the points that I think are important to counter the argument that they are not the same Freddy. So to begin, Glamrock Freddy is found in Phaser Blast. That goes along with the Vanny being freed ending. It's also the Freddy is missing his head, and the damage is consistent with staff bots disassembling him. So if Gregory is able to take off his head, then it shows that Freddy wasn't immediately aggressive at the time of him losing his head, which to me makes sense that Gregory or Vanessa or Vanny or whoever that comes back to the area to set up the security nodes and repurpose the Freddy body to activate it as a sort of security node guard. Or it's possible they just sent staff bots to do that security node work for them, which could even explain the heap of staff bots that are all over the place. The fact that this Freddy isn't on the Vanny network, I think, is another thing you could add to the list, that it can't see you when you put on the Vanny mask, because at Security Breach, Freddy was not able to connect to the network. But for me, the most convincing aspects, besides the things we see in Ruin, are the things that Scott was trying to show us in Security Breach itself. But as a whole, we kind of missed what he was going for originally. There's a quote from Scott Cawthon that he told the community quite a while back, I think even before Security Breach. But the quote is, "There have been other times, however, when my original intentions didn't come across clearly. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game." That's not really a retcon, it's simply an attempt to guide the story toward where it was originally intended to go. There is a lot of information crammed into these games, and there will always be details that I don't convey 100% as intended. I try to clear up those items. So the point of me showing you this quote is simply to explain that Glamrock Freddy having the prototype on his foot is one of these moments that Scott referred to, where Scott's original intention was to let us know that Glamrock Freddy is a prototype animatronic by hinting about his age in multiple ways during Security Breach. But there's so much going on in Security Breach, and there's so many stories, details, like rooms to explore, dialogue, secrets, confusion that people had, that it was kind of overlooked that Glamrock Freddy is in fact old. But we do have multiple instances where this was clearly hinted at, and I'd like to go over a few of those examples now. First of all, Freddy is the only animatronic in the Pizzaplex that constantly has to use a recharge station. There isn't a single time in the game that the other animatronics are shown having to use one, which seems to imply this particular animatronic isn't up to par with the other Glamrocks. He is also the only animatronic to constantly break down and need assistance. Secondly, a slightly weaker point, but as the animatronics start weathering or decaying, whatever word you want to use, throughout the night, Freddy is the only one with noticeable paint color changes as he withers. His bow tie paint specifically scrapes away to show a very specific purple underneath, which is often associated with Fredbear. That bow tie is very particular, which points back to an older time period. But take that point with a grain of salt, as the upgrades seem to play a large part in this color change. Like specifically Chica's voice box, I think, is the one that actually turns the bow tie purple. So for a much stronger point though, to me the most important one, the Showtime disc that Gregory finds in Security Breach. When Gregory finds it, he mentions that it looks old, and the second it's removed from the office, Freddy immediately is able to get back on his feet with a second wind, as he puts it. He again starts losing power soon after, and after Gregory runs the Showtime disc on the third floor, it helps Freddy again. So this old Showtime disc is directly connected to Glamrock Freddy himself. We know the disc is older than the current Pizzaplex stuff. This is a big hint to show the player that there's something about Freddy that makes him older than the other animatronics. Since Scott didn't see much talk about this or something, he made sure that in Ruin, we were able to connect the dots and understand that this Freddy is the prototype Glamrock Freddy, which for me opens up a whole bunch of new questions and possibilities. Right away, I wonder if this Freddy was sent in with the same shipment as the Mimic was. Before the Pizzaplex was even open, it was still under construction. The story varies slightly in the book from the game lore, but essentially, we can assume a shipment was sent in with the Mimic, and presumably some Pizzaplex animatronics were there with it. FNAF actually has a video going further into some of that backstory. And I'll link that video down below because it was really good, just explaining some of that background lore in a way that's like fun to listen to and watch. I just want to include it here because in his interview with Steel Wool Studios, he does get confirmation that he's solved a good amount of the mysteries in the Pizzaplex, and I'm guessing that that background story with the mimic and the shipment is one of those stories. So yeah, I just want to include that there as well. For me, the big thing is just how Glamrock Freddy is essentially able to be controlled by that old Showtime disc. And then it just kind of brings the question of what was the point of that Showtime disc? Was that like there's a lot more to that, and that's kind of its own theory. So if anyone's made any theories about that, please let me know who made those theories below, because I would love to go watch those. So yeah, that's all I've got. There's a lot more that we could talk about. I just want to keep the video short because sometimes I get really wordy. And so yeah, let me know what you think and which side of the argument you stand, because whichever direction you take this, you have a lot of interesting questions. So for me, it's like, if this Freddy's old, the question becomes how old? Like, was he back there with the mimic? Is he part of an even older line of animatronics? Like, who knows? But if you take it the other way and it's not Freddy, then the question is immediately, what was this Freddy doing there? When in the timeline does this happen? Was the Pizzaplex opened again before this? Was there like a second incident that happened? Because obviously they would have had to have another Glamrock Freddy, and then what happened to this Glamrock Freddy's head? And you just get like all kinds of questions. So thanks for watching. Talk to you later.